Welcome to Memory Monday. Today, we'll be reading a story from our new series, Crossroads Creek and the Narrow Road. Our memory verse today is Matthew 7:13. Enter through the narrow gate. The gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to hell, and many people enter through that gate. Gather round, Mayor Mary Max called to all the people of Crossroads Cove. It was a lovely day, and all around the town, the citizens chattered with excitement. Today was the day to begin their journey. Men, women, children, and even their pets walked excitedly to the town square. Mayor Mary Max was standing in the community stage, smiling proudly as he waited for the citizens to join him in the center of their little village. Faithful Fern and her sister Willow the Wise held hands as they followed behind their mother and their father. Today is the day we get to choose which road we will travel. The road will lead us to our forever home. She squealed in excitement. Willow squeezed her sister's hand and answered, I can't wait, but I'm a little nervous. Remember what Mom and Dad said last night? They said not many people were going to choose to travel on the same road as us. Fern nodded. Yeah, I hope we don't get lonely. Before either of them could speak further, Mayor Mary Max's voice boomed. 5 minutes until we begin our journey, folks. Let's get a move on it. Fern watched across the street. Wide Road Willie, Seems Legit Leonard, Sounds Right Sammy, Go Along Gary, and Foolish Floyd were all walking her way and laughing as they slapped each other on the backs. They were always such goofs. She didn't think any of them had a serious bone in their bodies. But at the same time, she was a little jealous that they always seemed to be having fun. Willow followed her sister's gaze and whispered, Remember what Mom said. Their kind of fun isn't always really fun. Fern frowned. Maybe not, but it looks like it is. We'll make our own fun, Willow promised. Fern grinned. Deal, she said. Travel begins in 1 moment, Mayor's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. As a reminder for all of you for how today will go. When I give the signal to begin our journey, each person will choose the road they would like to walk. There will be 2 choices. Road 1 is the wide road. There is a lot of room for a lot of friends. It is the easiest path. Gravel so smooth you might think you're walking on clouds. It's the fun road, Wide Road Willie shouted. It's the road I'll be choosing, and it'll be a party. Seems legit, shouted out Leonard. Unsurprisingly, Sounds Right Sammy called, Sounds right to me. Mayor Mary Max grinned. Not to influence anyone, but the wide road is the one I will be choosing as well. I say this because the second road is narrow. It is not always easy. It is certainly not as popular. There will be times when you feel as though you must walk alone, for it is so narrow. There are more rules on the narrow road. What's at the end of the roads? Go Along Gary questioned. Mayor Mary Max's nose pulled to one side in uncertainty as he answered, Depends on who you talk to. Legend has it at the end of each road is a gate. Some people say there is nothing on the other side of the gates. Some say the wide road leads to Trouble Town, and that the narrow road leads to Heaven's Hills. He scoffed. I say we have fun now and worry about the rest later. A large crowd agreed with cheers, although a few of the townspeople did not agree and stayed silent. Can't we just switch roads if we don't like the road we started on? Foolish Floyd asked. Mayor Mary Max nodded. Certainly, you may switch as many times as you like. Pastor Pete stepped forward and cautioned his friends. You may switch sides, but everyone's journey ends in their own time. You never know when your travels will come to an end. I'd suggest everyone choose the narrow road and stay on it. Heavenly Hills is a far better place than Trouble Town. A large section of town booed at Pastor Pete, and the mayor laughed. That's what the narrow road people always say. Why worry about today? What may happen tomorrow? That's what I always say. Seems legit, shouted Leonard. Sounds right, agreed Sammy. Mayor nodded. It's time to begin our journey. Everyone, choose a road and begin your travels. Faithful Fern watched as most of the town rushed towards the wide road, laughing and having a fun time. She looked at Willow, her parents, Pastor Pete, and a couple other travelers. They smiled and headed towards the narrow road. Fern knew that each citizen got to choose the road they would travel, even the children, and this was her time to make a choice. Up until now, she had never questioned which road she would choose. Her parents and most of her friends from church were walking toward the narrow road. But now that the choice was to be made, she looked at both groups. The wide road group was large, and they looked like they were going to have so much fun all the way. Her eyes looked over to the narrow road, and she sighed. The gravel wasn't as smooth as that of the wide road. The mayor was right. There were times where it looked as though the road was so narrow she would have to travel alone. Willow the Wise turned back and motioned for her. Coming, she asked. Fern shook the thoughts from her head and grinned. Yeah, I'm coming. She started towards the narrow road with her sister. Do you really think this hard journey on the narrow road will pay off in the end? Willow smiled. Of course! Heavenly Hills is more beautiful than any place we've ever seen or ever could imagine, she promised. Fern looked over to the many people on the wide road. Why are they so happy if they're headed to Troubletown, she wondered. Willow sighed. Most of them aren't worried about the future. They see it's an easy, smooth road, and so they choose it. In fact, a lot of them don't believe Troubletown or Heavenly Hills even exist. Even though it looked like the people on the wide road were having the grandest adventure, she felt sad for them. She hoped they would choose to change paths before it was too late. For when they reached their final destination, she knew there would no longer be the option of changing their fate. The day was passing quickly, and while they weren't having a big party or as easy of a walk as the wide road people, the narrow road people were sharing meaningful conversations and even had a laugh or two of their own. When the afternoon came, the clouds that had been keeping the day breezy and beautiful began to darken, and the wind began to blow. Before they knew it, rain poured from the sky as a thunderstorm rolled in. Fern huddled up next to Mom, and Willow moved in close to Dad. They hoped the rain wouldn't last, for even in a few moments, mud started to form around their feet. Come over here, Pastor Pete called out to his friends on the narrow road. I found a lovely tunnel on the road. It will give us shelter until the storm passes. Fern, Willow, and a few of the others on the narrow road moved greatly to where Pastor Pete was grinning. Fern shivered, but she was glad they would soon dry off and continue their journey. She watched as the grown-ups all around her shared conversations about the trip so far and how they couldn't wait to arrive at Heavenly Hills. Fern had to admit to herself that she couldn't wait to get there either. She just wished the narrow road was easier to pass. She wished it was more like the wide road. She reminded herself that the narrow road wasn't unenjoyable either, though. She and Willow had picked wildflowers and made crowns of them as they walked. A few times, she overheard the people on the wide road fighting amongst themselves as they traveled. Shouts of delight drew Fern from her thoughts. Mudslide Hill, she heard someone shout and giggle. Look, Willow exclaimed, pointing towards the wide road. The grown-ups on the wide road hill were relaxed and dry under a canopy that covered the road, while the children laughed and whooped. The hill they had walked up had turned into a mudslide, and the children were sliding down it as though they were on a water slide. They were covered in mud, and their teeth shone as white as snow when they smiled. Wide Road Willie finished sliding down the muddy hill and spotted Fern. He waved at her. Come on over, he shouted. It's so much fun. Fern looked at the narrow road and frowned. While it was muddy like the wide road, it was far too narrow to try and slide. Can we go over to the wide road just to slide? she asked her parents. Mom frowned. I'm afraid not, she answered. We must stay on the narrow road if we want to arrive at Heavenly Hills. Willow looked sad. It looks like fun. You coming? Willie shouted. Fern shook her head slowly. We are going to stay on the narrow path. We want our final destination to be Heavenly Hills. Sounds legit. Leonard pointed and laughed at Fern. Losers! We are going to have fun on the wide road, and when it's about time to get to the end of our road, we'll switch paths. Sounds good, Sammy nodded. Yeah, why not get the best of both worlds? Before Fern could answer, the boys laughed at her one more time, then ran back to the top of the hill to slide down again. Pastor Pete came alongside the sisters and smiled. It does look like a lot of fun. But the journey down the narrow road, although sometimes it seems long, is actually a very quick walk. In comparison to the life we'll have in Heavenly Hills, it's like the blink of an eye. But the joy and the prize of being a citizen of Heavenly Hills is worth taking the harder path now. Fern nodded. I think I understand. As she smiled, the sun shone through the clouds and a rainbow appeared. Look, a rainbow, she exclaimed. Her friends on Narrow Road looked up and smiled at the rainbow. That night, as Fern and her friends camped under the twinkling stars, she smiled and thanked God for the journey she was on. She knew the narrow path was not always going to be the easiest path, but she knew it led to the happiest of all endings, life in Heavenly Hills. Fern learned a lot about the wide and narrow road in our story today, didn't she? This reminds me of our memory verse today, Matthew 7:13. Enter through the narrow gate. The gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to hell, and many people enter through that gate. The roads in our story are like the roads of life we have to choose from. A lot of people in the world are living sinful lives, doing as they please. Sometimes it might look like they're even having more fun than those of us who are choosing to live for God. Sometimes you might feel like you're the only person in your friend group who is following Jesus. You might not go see the same movies as your friends. You might have stricter rules in your home than they have in their homes. They might make fun of you for being different. But if the differences in your life are because you're choosing to follow Jesus, that means you are following the narrow road. The narrow road leads to heaven. When you live for and love Jesus with all you have, you are headed towards the greatest prize of all, life in heaven with Jesus. Can you help me say the memory verse one more time? Matthew 7:13. Enter through the narrow gate. The gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to hell, and many people enter through that gate. I'm glad we are choosing the narrow road. That's all for our story today. I hope you have a great week and stay on the narrow path. Come back next time so we can find out what happens with faithful Fern and her friends on the narrow road. See ya. Love you. Bye-bye.